And action! Hello, dear reader and viewer. Today, I am introducing episode 9 from Act 1, Scene 9, Crop Circles. This is, to put things into perspective, this is Act 1, still part of Act 1. As I explained before, there are 5 chapters in each part, in each act, and there's 5 acts throughout the book, 2020, as read to you by the captain. So, this is the next to last chapter in Act 2, which is called Making Ready. The name of the episode is Crop Circles, and I will now turn you over to the captain to tell you more about it. Hi. Welcome to Crop Circles. Captain's Log 20-0009. Written at Hermitage Study on a Sunday. A Sunday in the future. During my morning constitutional, I made a point to take a route past some of the cornfields and other fields with crops we had been growing in the village. This whole morning routine has worked out pretty good, and I am very happy with myself for sticking with it. In fact, the times I have taken a day or two off, mainly when it's raining, I notice the difference when I start back up again. At my age, you have to be consistent and consistently get a good workout, or your body will quickly turn to mush. At the rice paddy field, I paused for a moment. I didn't need to take a breather, but I was, as usual, in a contemplative mood. I leaned forward and rested my arms against the bamboo fence constructed around the field with the grasses poking up and what amounted to little more than swamp water. Bamboo is what they probably would have called this place if we were an Indian tribe, seeing as how we used so much of this stuff. It grows really fast, thrives in this environment, and makes for very durable lumber. But if we were going to be called a bamboo tribe, we would have a lot of company. Many of the villages all over Florida found out about bamboo and how to make good use of it. I know Kate's farm did. That led me to thinking about her invitation to come out to her place for their upcoming harvest festival. Funny how the mind works like that. You start out looking at crops, and then the next thing you know, your mind wanders to Indian tribes, bamboo, and harvest festivals. Thoughts of space aliens would be next, most likely. I took another look at the rice paddies. I know in the manual somewhere there is an entry from when Harrison first started trying to grow rice in this environment. He had found some seeds from an ancient version of a rice grass species that was known to be tolerant of salt water. It did not thrive exactly, but with practice and experimentation we were finally able to get some decent crops in water that was what we like to call brackish, meaning salt water would intrude from the bay into the fields, but it was mixed with measured amounts of the precious fresh water that we allowed into the mixture. We had a series of canals and irrigation systems and whatnot that kept our crops alive. Each villager also had their own small plot that they needed to tend to, offering their excess to others who needed it when they harvested and canned the rest for later. One of the things about this part of the world is that the growing season really stretches out over a long period of time, unlike up north where, from what I am told, even though the weather patterns have now made their growing season a lot different than in the olden days, they still have some sort of winter during which they can't grow much of anything. Besides which, they get these really bad winter cyclones where the cold air from what's left of the Arctic combines with the hot, moist air from down here in the southern latitudes. Those storms tear up a lot of ground when they hit, not to mention gardens. Those winter cyclone storms started coming on a real regular basis starting, I'd say back in the 20s. I made another mental note, or at least tried to look at that one up in the Harrison Chronicles once I get back from today's morning stroll. These random thoughts wandered into and out of my mind as I left the rice paddies and continued my morning walk, and sure enough, they somehow led my crazy brain back to Kate and the invitation to her shindig. I stopped for a second outside a little village cottage, trying to remember what it was I was trying to remember about Kate's invitation. The cottage was Mary Ann's, a sweet lady who still wore her hair in pigtails now and again, like that character in an old TV series I used to watch in my youth, back before I went off the grid and stopped watching TV altogether. Good old Mary Ann. I had been watching what they used to call reruns of a show about people stuck on an island, trying to survive, driving around in makeshift golf carts made out of bamboo and straw. Okay? That's Gilligan's Island. Before you know it, my mind started drifting off again, wondering if you could actually build such a contraption with some of our bamboo. Now, where was I? Oh, yeah. I was staring at a painted sign with a bunny rabbit on it that said, Happy Easter, and somehow that got my mind back in gear. When are people supposed to harvest their crops? Things had been laid out on the subject in the manuals a long time ago, but harvest time had become so routine we scarcely thought about it anymore. Plant during the growing season in a staggered pattern, so to speak, so that there was a continuous harvest of crops pretty much throughout the year, trying to avoid the worst parts of the storming season and, although few and far between these days, periods of frost. But over at Kate's village, they did things a little different. They did have a more frequent incidence of cold weather than we did, but that is not the reason they made a conscious effort to have a grand harvest time just before before winter started. It sounds a little pagan if you ask me, but they wanted to inject a little celebration into the harvest time to honor the earth that we all knew we relied upon so much to sustain us. We still had holidays in our village like Easter and Christmas, and we did have a Thanksgiving, which turned out to be one of the most important holidays, but we just did not focus as much on the celebration of all that the earth and sea gave to us like they did over at Kate's village. Hard to imagine it now, but way back when, people had lost their connection to the earth and had forgotten where their food and sustenance came from, and how to cultivate the dirt and the water to get enough to fill their bellies and their families' bellies. Those days were so long ago, but I still remember how it was back then. Okay, that's your introduction to Chapter 9, Crop Circles. There will be more information in that chapter about how to grow crops, this stuff about drought-tolerant rice paddies. Yes, dear reader and viewer, in the future you have to learn how to grow food. At least to some extent. There are food is grown locally. In your village you will grow crops to feed yourselves. You will be able to trade with other villages. That is true. However, all the villages throughout the world have to learn how to grow their own crops. They have to keep it close to where they live. They have to learn how to feed themselves. At least that's what we did. We had to learn that. You will learn the same thing, and you'll be able to get some more information about how to do that in episodes yet to come, and by reading 2020. Thank you very much for joining us. Join us again next week when we will be discussing, let's see, Captain Corncob. Yeah, that incident. That's the last chapter in Act 2, Making Ready. Thank you very much. Goodbye.